Of Freddie Gray goes before a trial board today.
Officer Ceaser Goodson was acquitted last January of any criminal wrongdoing in the death of Freddie Gray, but today began his internal Baltimore police hearing, and ABC2 News' Brian Cuba was there for it, and he joins us now with more tonight. Brian?
Kelly, of the 6 officers accused in Gray's death, none were found to be criminally responsible, but 5 of them face internal discipline. 2 of them chose to accept suspension. That leaves Lieutenant Brian Rice, Sergeant Alicia White, and Officer Ceaser Goodson, all of whom now face termination. Hosted at the University of Baltimore, Officer Ceaser Goodson is standing trial yet again. No criminal proceeding here, but it will determine whether or not the wagon driver could keep his job. In opening statements, lawyers for the Baltimore Police Department, the prosecution here, argued that this case boils down to 3 main points: duty, responsibility, and integrity. That Goodson did not adhere to policies leading to Gray's death, and he should be fired because of it. Goodson's lawyers arguing lack of duty and responsibility certainly played a role, but by the department, not one single officer.
Officer Goodson's defense is pointing the finger pretty directly at higher levels within the police department and talking about this as a systemic failure. Failure of both the police officers and a failure of Freddie Gray.
UB law professor David Jarrow sat through the criminal trial and is now peeking in on this trial board. We expect to hear a lot of the same evidence as last year, including the department's policy on seatbelting prisoners. Up until 3 days before Gray was arrested, securing a prisoner in a wagon was at the discretion of the officer. This new policy made it mandatory, and although it was emailed out just days before Gray's arrest, Goodson's attorneys say the department didn't follow through on hard copies or the practice of notifying officers on the rule changes during roll call. It was a systematic failure of the department, Goodson says, while attorneys for the BPD say it was Goodson's failure to ensure the safety of Gray. This trial board is expected to last through next Monday, but as Jarros explains, the burden of proof needed for guilt is a lot lower than beyond a reasonable doubt.
Here it's very different. It's preponderance of the evidence. That means more likely than not, as I tell my students, they got to get it past the 50-yard line.
And the refs are not a judge here, rather 3 law enforcement officers, including one from an outside agency. Although the state is moving toward a civilian member on these boards, community activists are frustrated that that is not happening here.
I think just looking at that actual board that's there now and the magnitude of this case, this is the perfect case to have voting civilians. I just don't feel like the impacted community is represented in any way in these proceedings.
Also different from the criminal case, the outcome won't be readily available. While we should know what counts Goodson could be found guilty of, the punishment remains a personnel matter. Commissioner Davis can enforce the board's recommendation here or impose a lesser punishment.
That's Brian.